the unexpected arrival. Ethan Blake was hunched over his workstation in the small laboratory he called home, surrounded by beakers and holographic displays. His tousled brown hair fell into his eyes as he adjusted his glasses, peering intently at the data streaming across the screen. A faint hum filled the air as machines whirred softly in the background, creating a comforting rhythm that accompanied his late-night research. Suddenly, 3 sharp knocks echoed through the lab, startling him from his concentration. He glanced at the clock. It was well past midnight. Who could be visiting at this hour? With a mix of curiosity and apprehension, Ethan rose from his chair and approached the door. He brushed his fingers along the edge of his lab coat, smoothing it down as he reached for the control panel. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a sight that took his breath away. Standing before him was an alien woman unlike any he had ever seen. Her skin shimmered in shades of deep blue and silver, reflecting the dim light of the lab. She had long, flowing hair that seemed to defy gravity, cascading around her shoulders like liquid starlight. Her eyes were large and luminous, swirling with colors that shifted like galaxies in motion. "Greetings," she said in a melodic voice that resonated with an otherworldly accent. "I am Zira of the Nilari." Ethan blinked in disbelief. "Zira? From Nilari? What brings you here?" "I have come with an urgent message," she replied, her expression serious despite her ethereal beauty. "It is imperative that we speak." Ethan stepped aside to allow her to enter, closing the door behind them. "Please, take a seat," he said, gesturing toward a chair at his cluttered desk. Zira perched gracefully on the edge of the chair, her movements fluid and deliberate. "I understand this may be overwhelming for you," she began, her voice steady yet urgent. "But time is of the essence." He nodded slowly, trying to process the reality of having an alien visitor in his lab. "What is this urgent message?" Zira took a deep breath, her gaze piercing into his as if searching for something within him. "Our worlds are in danger," she stated plainly. "A force is rising that threatens both Nilari and Earth." Ethan's heart raced at her words. He had always been fascinated by extraterrestrial life and had dedicated years to studying potential threats from beyond their planet. But to hear it from an actual alien was something entirely different. "What kind of force?" he asked cautiously. "A rogue faction known as the Caldari," Zira explained. "They seek to conquer planets rich in resources and enslave their inhabitants. They have set their sights on Earth next." Ethan leaned back in his chair, absorbing her words. The Caldari were notorious across galaxies for their ruthless tactics and advanced technology. The thought of them targeting Earth sent chills down his spine. "What do you need from me?" he asked, determination creeping into his voice. Zira's expression softened slightly as she regarded him with respect. "I require your knowledge of human technology and your understanding of Earth's defenses. Together we can devise a plan to protect your planet." Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline at the prospect of working alongside an alien being to defend Earth from an impending threat. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined when he first began his research. "Okay," he said firmly. "Let's get started." As they began discussing strategies and sharing information about their respective technologies, Ethan found himself captivated not just by Zira's intelligence but also by her passion for her people and their home planet. Hours passed as they delved deeper into plans for defense against the Caldari invasion. They worked side by side, exchanging ideas and insights until exhaustion began to creep in. "Perhaps we should take a break," Ethan suggested after noticing Zira's eyelids drooping slightly. "Agreed," she replied with a soft smile that lit up her features. As they took a moment to breathe amidst their intense brainstorming session, Ethan couldn't help but feel an undeniable connection forming between them, a bond forged through shared purpose and mutual respect. "Thank you for trusting me with this information," he said sincerely. Zira met his gaze with intensity that made him feel exposed yet exhilarated. "It is not just trust, it is hope," she replied softly. Ethan realized then that this was more than just a mission, it was about saving lives, both hers and countless others on Earth, and perhaps even forming an alliance between their two worlds. As dawn broke outside the lab window, casting golden rays across their cluttered workspace, Ethan felt invigorated by their collaboration and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together with Zira at his side. Cultural exchange. Ashton McAllister had never anticipated that his life would take such an unexpected turn. Just a few days ago, he was a standard peacekeeper stationed on the Dylan home world, focused on maintaining peace and order. Now, he found himself navigating the complexities of an interspecies relationship with Rihanna, a beautiful alien woman assigned to him as part of a population growth initiative. The evening after their initial conversation was filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Ashton had invited Rihanna to join him for dinner, wanting to create a comfortable atmosphere where they could both relax and get to know each other better. As they settled at the table, he noticed how she seemed to absorb every detail of her surroundings with wide-eyed wonder. "Do you have any favorite Earth foods?" Ashton asked, trying to spark a conversation. Rihanna's silver eyes lit up as she considered his question. "I've only tried a few things so far. The lunar berry juice was delightful. But I'm curious about your traditional dishes." "Great choice. How about I make us some pasta?" "It's one of my favorites," Ashton suggested, feeling a sense of pride in sharing his culture with her. "Pasta? What is that?" Rihanna asked, tilting her head slightly in curiosity. Ashton chuckled softly. "It's a type of noodle made from wheat flour. You boil it in water and serve it with various sauces. I'll show you how it's done." As he moved to the kitchen area, he could feel Rihanna's gaze on him, her interest palpable. He began preparing the ingredients: fresh tomatoes, garlic, herbs, and olive oil. As he chopped the vegetables, he glanced over his shoulder to see Rihanna observing intently. "Would you like to help?" he offered. Her face brightened at the invitation. "Yes, please. What should I do?" Ashton guided her through the process of washing and chopping vegetables. They laughed together as she struggled with the knife at first, her delicate hands not quite accustomed to the task. With each shared moment, Ashton felt the tension between them ease. They were transforming from strangers into friends. "Tell me more about your world," Rihanna said as she diced tomatoes with increasing confidence. "Well," Ashton began, "Earth is diverse, different countries have unique cultures, languages, and foods. I grew up in a place called New York City. It's bustling with life and has people from all over the globe." Rihanna listened intently, her eyes sparkling with fascination. "What is it like living in such a busy place?" "It can be overwhelming at times," Ashton admitted. "But there's also a certain energy that makes it exciting. There are always new things to experience: museums, theaters, parks. You name it." As they continued cooking together, Rihanna shared stories about her home planet Dylan, the lush landscapes filled with bioluminescent flora and fauna that thrived under its 3 moons. She described the vibrant festivals celebrated by her people and how music played an essential role in their culture. "I wish I could see Dylan someday," Ashton said wistfully as he stirred the sauce simmering on the stove. Rihanna smiled softly at him. "Perhaps one day you will visit. There is so much beauty there." After dinner was ready, they sat down at the table adorned with their culinary creation, a colorful plate of pasta topped with fresh herbs and a drizzle of olive oil. "This looks amazing," Rihanna exclaimed as she took her first bite. Her eyes widened in delight as she savored the flavors dancing on her palate. "I'm glad you like it," Ashton responded, feeling a rush of satisfaction at having pleased her. They spent hours over dinner, sharing stories about their lives. Rihanna spoke of her upbringing in Dylan's serene valleys while Ashton recounted tales from his childhood on Earth. The more they talked, the more they realized how much they had in common despite their vastly different backgrounds. As night fell outside his apartment window, Ashton felt an undeniable connection growing between them, a bond forged through laughter and shared experiences. After dinner, they moved to the living area where Ashton had set up a small holographic projector for entertainment. "How about we watch a movie?" he suggested. "What is a movie?" Rihanna asked curiously. "It's like a story told through moving images," he explained while setting up the projector. Ashton selected a classic Earth film, a light-hearted romantic comedy, and soon they were both engrossed in the story unfolding on screen. Rihanna laughed at the humorous moments and gasped during the dramatic scenes. Her reactions were genuine and infectious. "Your movies are quite entertaining," she remarked after one particularly funny scene. "I'm glad you think so," Ashton replied with a grin. As they settled into comfortable silence while watching the film, Ashton couldn't help but steal glances at Rihanna. She was utterly captivating. Even in casual moments like this one, there was an elegance about her that drew him in deeper. When the movie ended, Rihanna turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Thank you for sharing this experience with me," she said sincerely. "I feel like I'm beginning to understand your world better." "I'm happy to share it with you," Ashton replied earnestly. "And I want to learn more about yours too." The conversation flowed easily between them as they discussed their favorite parts of the film and what made them laugh or cry. Each exchange brought them closer together until Ashton felt as if they were no longer just an alien and a human but rather two individuals forging an unexpected friendship. As they prepared for bed later that night, Ashton felt grateful for how their evening had unfolded. Despite the unusual circumstances that had brought them together, there was something undeniably special about their connection, a spark that hinted at possibilities beyond mere friendship. In his heart, Ashton knew this was just the beginning of their journey together, a journey filled with discovery, understanding, and perhaps even love across galaxies. The warning. Ashton McAllister awoke the next morning with a sense of urgency that he couldn't quite shake. The previous evening had been a whirlwind of laughter and connection with Rihanna, but now, as sunlight streamed through the window, he felt a nagging sense of foreboding. He quickly dressed in his peacekeeper uniform, the familiar weight of the armor giving him a sense of purpose. After a quick breakfast, he found Rihanna in the living room, her violet skin glowing softly in the morning light as she examined a holographic map of Earth that Ashton had left on the table. She looked up when he entered, her silver eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Good morning. This is fascinating," she said, gesturing to the map. "So many places to explore." "Good morning," Ashton replied, forcing a smile despite the tension in his chest. "I'm glad you're finding it interesting. I have to head to work soon. Are you ready for another day of exploring?" Rihanna nodded eagerly. "Absolutely. I've been thinking about visiting that park you mentioned yesterday, the one with the big trees and flowers." "Central Park," Ashton clarified, feeling a bit lighter at her enthusiasm. "It's beautiful this time of year. Just be careful and stay in populated areas." "Of course. I'll be fine," she assured him, her confidence shining through. After a quick breakfast together, Ashton prepared to leave for the Peacekeeper Command Center. As he stepped out into the bustling streets of Dillon, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air felt charged, as if it were pregnant with unspoken warnings. At the command center, Ashton was met by his superior officer, Commander Lyra. She had a stern expression on her face that immediately put him on high alert. "Ashton," she began, her voice grave. "We need to talk." "Is everything okay?" he asked, concern flooding his mind. "Not quite," Lyra replied, leading him into a private briefing room. "We've received intelligence reports about increased Caldari activity near our borders." Ashton's stomach dropped at the mention of the Caldari, a ruthless faction known for their aggressive expansionism and enslavement of other species. "What kind of activity?" "Ship movements and unusual energy readings," Lyra explained as she activated a holographic display showing various data points and images of Caldari ships. "We suspect they're planning an incursion into our territory." "What do we know about their intentions?" Ashton pressed. Lyra's expression darkened further. They're after resources, specifically our agricultural zones and technology. If they succeed in breaching our defenses, it could spell disaster for both Dylan and Earth. Ashton felt his heart race at the implications. He thought of Rihanna and how vulnerable she was being here without any knowledge of what was happening beyond their immediate world. We need to prepare our defenses immediately, Ashton urged, determination surging within him. Lyra nodded gravely. Agreed. We'll be mobilizing all available units to strengthen our perimeter and gather intelligence on their movements. Ashton spent the next few hours coordinating with other peacekeepers and strategizing defenses against potential Caldari incursions. His mind kept drifting back to Rihanna. He needed to warn her about what was happening. Once his shift ended, he hurried home, anxiety gnawing at him as he thought about how to explain the situation without causing her unnecessary fear. When he entered his apartment, he found Rihanna sitting on the couch, engrossed in a book about Earth's history that he had left out for her. She looked up as he walked in, her expression brightening instantly. "Welcome back. I've learned so much about your planet already," she exclaimed enthusiastically. "That's great," Ashton replied, forcing a smile even as worry churned inside him. "But we need to talk." Rihanna's smile faded slightly as she sensed his seriousness. "What is it?" He took a deep breath and sat down across from her, trying to find the right words. "There's been some troubling news from the command center today." "What kind of news?" she asked, concern creeping into her voice. "The Caldari are mobilizing near our borders," Ashton explained carefully. "They may be planning an attack on Dylan, and potentially Earth." Rihanna's eyes widened in shock as she processed his words. "That sounds serious. What does this mean for us?" "It means we need to be cautious," Ashton replied firmly. "I want you to stay close to home until we know more about their intentions." Rihanna nodded slowly but looked troubled. "But what if they come here? What if they find me?" Ashton leaned forward, wanting to reassure her despite the gravity of their situation. "We have defenses in place, we're prepared for this kind of threat. But I need you to promise me that you won't venture out alone until this is resolved." "I promise," she said softly, though there was an unmistakable tremor in her voice. He reached across the table and took her hand gently in his own, a gesture meant to comfort both of them amidst uncertainty. "We'll face this together." Rihanna squeezed his hand back, determination flickering in her silver eyes. "Together." As they sat there holding hands, Ashton felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him, a fierce desire to keep Rihanna safe no matter what challenges lay ahead. That night was filled with tension as they both tried to distract themselves from their worries by watching movies and discussing lighter topics. However, every sound outside made them jump slightly as they were reminded of the looming threat. Later that evening, after a particularly intense action film had ended, Rihanna turned to him with an earnest expression. "Ashton, if things get dangerous, what will happen to us?" He hesitated for a moment before answering honestly. "I'll do everything I can to protect you, no matter what it takes." Her gaze softened at his words. There was an unspoken understanding between them now, a bond forged not just by circumstance but by shared purpose and commitment. As they settled into bed later that night, each lost in their thoughts, Ashton knew that whatever happened next would change everything for both him and Rihanna. Rising tensions. The atmosphere in the Nebula Lounge was electric, filled with laughter and the soft hum of music that blended seamlessly with the vibrant lights swirling overhead. Ashton felt a mix of excitement and anxiety as he introduced Rihanna to his friends, hoping she would feel comfortable among them. He watched as her silver eyes sparkled with curiosity, taking in the diverse crowd of beings from various planets. "Rihanna, this is Axel, Rick, Jace, and Baron," Ashton said, gesturing toward his friends. "They're all part of the Peacekeeper team here on Dylan. Pleasure to meet you," Axel exclaimed, his teal skin glistening under the neon lights. Ashton's been keeping you all to himself. You're a lucky lady. Rihanna smiled politely but instinctively moved a little closer to Ashton, seeking his reassurance. He placed a protective hand on her back, feeling the warmth of her skin through the fabric of her dress. She's not just lucky, she's exceptional, he replied, shooting Axel a warning look. Rick raised an eyebrow at Ashton's defensiveness but grinned. Looks like someone is smitten already. Ashton felt his cheeks heat up slightly but chose to ignore their teasing. Instead, he focused on Rihanna, who seemed to be relaxing as she engaged with his friends. They asked her about her home planet and shared stories about their own experiences in various galaxies. Dylan sounds beautiful, Jace said, leaning forward with interest. I've always wanted to visit a planet with bioluminescent flora. It truly is enchanting, Rihanna replied, her enthusiasm evident. The landscapes are like nothing you've ever seen, especially under our 3 moons. Ashton felt a surge of pride as Rihanna spoke about her home. She had a way of captivating everyone around her with her charm and grace. Yet, beneath the surface of their light-hearted conversation, Ashton couldn't shake the feeling that something ominous loomed on the horizon. As the night progressed and drinks flowed freely, Ashton noticed that Rihanna was beginning to feel overwhelmed by the attention from his friends. He could see her becoming more reserved as they continued to bombard her with questions and compliments. Hey, let's take a break from all this chatter, Ashton suggested gently, guiding Rihanna away from the group toward a quieter corner of the lounge where they could talk without interruption. Thank you, Rihanna said softly as they settled into a secluded booth. I didn't expect so much attention. It can be a lot to handle, Ashton agreed, trying to gauge her feelings. You did great out there. I appreciate your support, she replied, looking up at him with gratitude in her eyes. It's just. I'm still adjusting to everything here. Ashton nodded in understanding. It's a big change for you. If you ever feel uncomfortable or need space, just let me know. Rihanna smiled faintly but then glanced around nervously as if sensing something off in the atmosphere. Do you think your friends will accept me? Of course they will, Ashton reassured her. They're good people, they just want to get to know you better. Just then, Baron approached their booth with a drink in hand and an amused expression on his face. You two look cozy over here. What are you plotting? He teased. We're just having a moment, Ashton replied curtly, wanting to keep their conversation private. Baron raised his hands in mock surrender but leaned in closer. Seriously though, I think it's great that you're helping Rihanna adjust. It can't be easy for her. Ashton appreciated Baron's acknowledgement but felt an unsettling sensation creeping back into his mind. The looming threat of the Caldari invasion weighed heavily on him. After some time spent chatting and laughing with Baron, Ashton decided it was best to return to their friends before things got too serious again. As they rejoined the group, he noticed that Axel had taken it upon himself to entertain everyone with exaggerated stories about their recent missions. And then we had to chase down this rogue ship through an asteroid field. It was like something out of a Holo movie. Axel exclaimed animatedly. Rihanna listened intently, laughing at the right moments while also glancing at Ashton for reassurance. He felt proud of how well she was adapting but couldn't shake off the nagging feeling that danger was approaching. Suddenly, an alert flashed across Ashton's wrist communicator, a notification from Peacekeeper Command regarding unusual activity detected near Dylan's borders. Excuse me for a moment, he said abruptly to Rihanna and his friends before stepping away to check the message. As he read through the details, reports of Caldari ships gathering near their outer territories, his heart sank further into dread. The time for playful distractions was ending, they needed to prepare for what lay ahead. Returning to Rihanna and his friends with a serious expression etched across his face, he knew he had to address the situation directly. Hey everyone, Ashton called out, drawing their attention away from Axel's story. We need to talk. What's up? Rick asked casually but instantly noticed Ashton's demeanor had shifted. I just received some intel from command, Ashton began cautiously. There are signs that Caldari forces are mobilizing near our borders. The mood around the table shifted dramatically as concern washed over his friends' faces. What do we know? Jace asked urgently. They're likely planning an incursion into our territory, Ashton replied grimly. We need to prepare our defenses immediately. Rihanna looked between them with wide eyes filled with concern. What does this mean for us? For Dylan. It means we need to stay vigilant, Ashton said firmly while placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I'll make sure you're safe. Baron nodded in agreement. We should head back to command and see how we can assist. As they made plans for their next steps, Ashton felt a sense of urgency settle over him, a reminder that while they were enjoying moments of connection and camaraderie amidst uncertainty, real danger was drawing closer by the minute. With every passing moment, he realized how much he cared for Rihanna. He would do everything in his power to protect her from whatever threats awaited them on the horizon. The final decision. The atmosphere in the Nebula Lounge buzzed with energy, but for Ashton McAllister, the excitement felt distant. He sat across from Rihanna, who was animatedly chatting with his friends, her laughter ringing like music in his ears. Yet, the weight of the impending Caldari threat loomed heavily on his mind. He couldn't shake off the feeling that time was running out. Ashton glanced at Rihanna, her violet skin glowing under the colorful lights, her smile infectious. She had embraced this new life on Dylan with grace and enthusiasm, and he admired her for it. But he also felt a growing sense of responsibility toward her, a need to protect her from the dangers that were now becoming all too real. Hey, you okay? Axel's voice broke through Ashton's thoughts. His friend leaned closer, concern etched on his face. You seem a bit distracted. Yeah, just thinking about some things, Ashton replied, forcing a smile. It's been a long week. Axel nodded knowingly but didn't press further. Instead, he turned his attention back to Rihanna, who was sharing stories about her home planet. Ashton watched as she animatedly described the bioluminescent forests of Dylan and their vibrant festivals. The way she spoke captivated everyone around her. Ashton couldn't help but feel a swell of pride at how well she was adapting. But as he looked around the lounge, he noticed an unsettling number of Caldari operatives mingling among the patrons, disguised but unmistakable in their demeanor. The tension in his gut tightened. Rihanna, he said gently, leaning closer to her as she finished a story. Can we step outside for a moment? I need to talk to you. Her smile faded slightly as she sensed the seriousness in his tone. Of course, she replied, standing up and following him toward a quieter corner of the lounge. Once they were outside, Ashton took a deep breath, trying to steady himself against the rising tide of anxiety. I need you to listen carefully, he began, looking into her silver eyes that reflected both concern and curiosity. What is it? Rihanna asked, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling around them. There's something I haven't told you, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. The Caldari are mobilizing near our borders. There's a very real possibility that they may attack soon. Rihanna's expression shifted from curiosity to alarm. What does that mean for us? For Dylan. It means we need to be prepared, Ashton replied firmly. I don't want you out in public places where you could be at risk. I need you to stay close to home until we know more. Rihanna nodded slowly, absorbing his words. But what about your friends? They're here, they're safe. They might be safe now, Ashton said urgently, but we can't take any chances. I care about you too much to let anything happen. Her eyes softened at his words, and for a moment, they stood in silence under the stars that twinkled above them like distant promises. The connection between them felt stronger than ever, a bond forged not just by circumstance but by genuine concern and affection. I understand, Rihanna finally said, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her heart. I'll do whatever it takes to stay safe. Good, Ashton said with relief. We'll figure this out together. As they returned inside the lounge, Ashton felt a renewed sense of determination wash over him. He would protect Rihanna at all costs. She had become too important to him to let anything jeopardize her safety. The rest of the night passed in a blur of laughter and conversation with friends, but Ashton remained vigilant, his senses heightened as he scanned the crowd for any signs of danger. As they left the Nebula Lounge later that evening, Ashton felt an unsettling tension in the air, a premonition that something was about to change drastically. Let's take a hover cab back, he suggested as they stepped outside into the cool night air. Rihanna nodded but looked around nervously as if sensing something amiss herself. Do you think we'll be safe? I'll make sure we are, Ashton assured her firmly as they climbed into the cab. The ride back was filled with an uneasy silence, both were lost in their thoughts about what lay ahead. As they arrived at his apartment complex and stepped out onto the sidewalk, Ashton felt an overwhelming urge to pull Rihanna close, to shield her from whatever darkness loomed on their horizon. Once inside the apartment, he locked the door behind them and turned to face Rihanna. I want you to stay here tonight, he said firmly but gently. I'll sleep on the couch so you can have some space. Rihanna's eyes widened slightly at his suggestion. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. You're not imposing, Ashton replied with conviction. This is about keeping you safe. She nodded slowly but seemed hesitant still. Thank you for being so kind. Ashton smiled softly at her gratitude but felt an ache in his chest. He wanted more than just friendship, he wanted to be there for her in every way possible. Later that night as they settled into their respective spaces, Ashton on the couch and Rihanna in the guest room, he found it difficult to sleep with thoughts racing through his mind about their future together amidst looming threats. Hours passed before exhaustion finally overtook him, however, even in sleep, dreams of danger and uncertainty haunted him. Suddenly jolted awake by a loud crash outside his window, Ashton sprang into action, his instincts kicking in as adrenaline surged through him. Rihanna, he shouted as he rushed toward her room. The door swung open just as she emerged from within, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. What happened? I don't know, he replied quickly while scanning their surroundings outside through the window. Stay close to me. Ashton moved toward the window cautiously. What he saw sent chills down his spine. A group of Caldari operatives had infiltrated their area under cover of darkness. We need to get out of here now, he urged Rihanna urgently as panic began to rise within him. Without hesitation, they grabbed essential items, communication devices and anything else they could carry, and hurried toward the emergency exit at the back of the building. As they descended down stairwells filled with shadows and uncertainty, Ashton couldn't shake off how much was at stake, not just for them but for both their worlds. Once outside in an alleyway shrouded by darkness, Ashton turned to Rihanna with fierce determination burning in his gaze. We'll find a way through this together, I promise. Rihanna nodded resolutely beside him. Despite fear gripping them both tightly like chains, they were united against whatever lay ahead. As they prepared themselves for what was coming next, their hearts racing, their bond deepened further than either had anticipated. It was no longer just about survival, it was about fighting for each other against all odds.